Captain Zara Chen jolted awake in her command chair as the emergency klaxon screamed through the bridge of the UES Defiance. The massive dreadnought, one of humanity's most advanced warships, had been drifting in the outer rim of the Kepler system for 3 weeks now. Their mission: investigate the complete radio silence from the mining colony on Kepler 442b. Report, Chen barked, her voice cutting through the chaos as her bridge crew scrambled to their stations. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the ship's communications officer, looked up from his console with wide eyes. His dark skin had gone pale, and his hands trembled as he worked the controls. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's not from the colony. Chen's blood ran cold. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, and what they saw would haunt every person on that bridge for the rest of their lives. The transmission was grainy, filled with static, but clear enough to see the terror in the alien's eyes. The creature on screen was unlike anything in their databases. It stood roughly 7 feet tall, with smooth pearl-white skin that seemed to shimmer under harsh lighting. Its head was elongated, crowned with what looked like natural crystal formations. 3 eyes, each the size of a human fist, stared out from the screen with desperate intelligence. When it spoke, the universal translator kicked in, but the voice that emerged was broken, filled with static and panic. Please. If anyone receives this, my name is Veltar of the Ethereal Communion. We made a terrible mistake. We thought your people were primitive. We thought we could harvest your colonies without resistance. The alien's image flickered, and in the background they could see sparks flying, hear the distant sounds of explosions and screaming. We were wrong, so very wrong. Your species, you're not like the others. You're from a death world. You're Deathworlders. The transmission cut to static, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Chen stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. Deathworlders. The term wasn't new to them. Human scientists had theorized that Earth was unusually hostile compared to other potentially habitable planets. But to hear it from an alien spoken with such terror— Sir, Webb said quietly, there's more. The transmission, it's not just a distress call. It's a warning. And it's not just being broadcast to us. Chen's stomach dropped. Who else is receiving it? Everyone, Captain, every human ship, every colony, every outpost. This message is being transmitted across the entire human communication network. The implications hit her like a physical blow. If hostile aliens had attacked human colonies, if they were now broadcasting warnings about humanity's nature across the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Torres, Chen called to her tactical officer, a stern woman with graying hair and scars from the Titan Wars. What's our status on the fleet? Elena Torres consulted her displays, her expression grim. Captain, I'm reading jump signatures throughout the system. Lots of them, both human and unknown. How many unknowns? Scanning now. Torres paused, her face going white. Ma'am, I'm reading over 300 alien vessels in this system alone. But Captain— She looked up, and Chen could see fear in the veteran officer's eyes. They're not advancing. They're running. Chen felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the ship's life support systems. If the aliens were fleeing— Webb, get me Admiral Hayes on the flagship. Priority 1. Already trying, Captain. But the traffic is intense. Every ship in the fleet is requesting orders. Through the viewports, Chen could see the lights of other ships in the distance. Humanity's third fleet, over 100 warships strong, had been assembled to investigate the silence from their outer colonies. They'd expected to find pirates or perhaps a natural disaster. Instead, they'd found themselves at the center of what looked like the beginning of an interstellar war. And judging by that terrified alien's warning, humanity was about to discover just how dangerous the galaxy thought they were. Chapter 1. The Discovery. 3 days earlier, the mining colony on Kepler 442b had been humanity's most prosperous outer rim settlement. Now, as the dropship descended through the planet's atmosphere, Captain Chen could see nothing but twisted metal and scorched earth, where the city of New Denver had once stood. "Jesus Christ," whispered Sergeant Riley O'Connor, the leader of Chen's Marine detail. The big Irishman had seen combat on 6 different worlds, but the destruction below made even him sick. What kind of weapons do this? Chen studied the tactical display as their shuttle banked toward the landing zone. The colony hadn't just been attacked, it had been systematically dismantled. Buildings had been taken apart with surgical precision, their materials sorted into neat piles. The spaceport was intact but empty. Even the orbital defense platforms were gone, leaving only twisted metal supports floating in space. "The kind that harvest," she replied grimly. "This wasn't conquest, this was farming." The shuttle touched down in what had been the colony's central square. As the Marines deployed, Chen reviewed what little intelligence they'd gathered. The last transmission from New Denver had been routine, a weekly supply report. Then, nothing. No distress calls, no warnings, no final messages. Just silence. "Doctor." Sarah Kim, the fleet's xenoarchaeologist, was the first to speak when they regrouped near the shuttle. She was young, barely 30, with the kind of brilliant mind that saw patterns others missed. Right now, she looked sick. "Captain, I've been analyzing the destruction patterns. This wasn't random. Look at this." She pulled up a holographic display from her scanner. They took everything organic, plants, food stores, even the soil from the agricultural domes, but they left behind anything purely technological, like they were collecting specimens, Torres muttered over the comm from orbit. Chen nodded, feeling a growing sense of unease. "How many people lived here, Doctor?" "Approximately 50,000, Kim replied. "Men, women, children, all gone." "But Captain," she paused, consulting her scanner again. "There are no bodies." The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. 50,000 people, vanished without a trace, their entire civilization harvested like crops. "Movement!" O'Connor's voice crackled over the comm. 2 clicks northeast at the comm center, something still operational." Chen looked toward the communication tower rising from the ruins. Its lights were blinking in a steady pattern, not random, but deliberate. A signal. "Let's go," she ordered. The comm center was a maze of shattered corridors and twisted metal, but the central transmission room was surprisingly intact. Banks of equipment hummed with power, and at the center of it all, a figure hunched over a control console. It was human. "My God," Dr. Kim gasped. "He's alive." The man at the console was elderly, his white hair matted with blood, his clothes torn and stained. When he heard them approach, he spun around and Chen saw madness dancing in his eyes. "You're too late," he whispered, his voice raw from screaming. "They took them all of them, but I got their message out. I warned everyone." Chen approached, slowly, her hand resting on her sidearm. "Sir, I'm Captain Chen, U.S. Navy. What's your name?" "Dr. Marcus Holloway," the man replied, trying to pull himself together. "I was the colony's chief communications officer. When they started taking people, I managed to hide in the sub-basement. I've been broadcasting on every frequency I could reach." "Broadcasting what?" Chen asked gently. Holloway's laugh was bitter and broken. "The truth about what they are, about what we are." He turned back to his console, fingers dancing over the controls. "They've been watching us, Captain, for decades. They thought we were weak, easy prey. They call us soft-worlders, species that evolved on paradise planets, no real challenges, no real dangers." Chen felt ice forming in her stomach. And they were wrong. Dead wrong. Holloway pulled up a recording on his screen. It showed tall, elegant aliens moving through the colony like ghosts, herding humans into containment fields with casual efficiency. They didn't know about Earth. They didn't know what kind of world made us. The recording shifted, showing the aliens' faces when the first wave of colonial militia had fought back. The elegant creatures had looked confused, as if the very concept of prey fighting back was foreign to them. "They're called the ethereal communion," Holloway continued. "A collective consciousness spread across hundreds of worlds. They've been harvesting lesser species for thousands of years. but they've never encountered anything like us. Chen watched the recording as human colonists, armed with nothing but mining equipment and sheer desperation, began to push back against their captors. The aliens' confusion turned to alarm, then to fear. "What happened?" she asked. "We fought back. Hard. We killed over a dozen of them before they brought in reinforcements." "But Captain..." Holloway turned to her, his eyes wide with a mixture of pride and terror. "I monitored their communications. They're terrified of us. They've never encountered a species that fights with such creativity, such violence. They're calling us Deathworlders." The term sent chills down Chen's spine. She'd heard xenobiologists theorize about it. The idea that Earth was unusually hostile compared to other habitable worlds, that humans had evolved under conditions that would kill most other species. "They're regrouping," Holloway said. "Gathering. They're fleets. But they're scared, Captain. For the first time in their history, they're afraid of their prey." Chen looked at the data streaming across Holloway's screens. Signal intercepts showed massive alien fleets moving throughout the sector, but they weren't advancing. They were consolidating, preparing for something big. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Days. Maybe hours. They're coming back, Captain. All of them. The entire communion. They've decided that humanity is too dangerous to harvest." Holloway's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're coming to exterminate us." Chen felt the weight of 50,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. 50,000 people who had died because humanity had finally encountered something that saw them as a threat. But as she looked at the data, at the evidence of alien fear, she felt something else rising in her chest. It felt like pride. Chapter 2. The Gathering, Storm Admiral. Sarah Hayes stood at the center of the UES Destiny's command deck, watching as her fleet assembled around her flagship. Through the massive viewports, she could see the running lights of over 200 human warships stretching to the horizon, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. But it might not be enough. "Admiral," called Commander Jackson Price, her chief intelligence officer, "we're receiving updates from the reconnaissance fleets. The alien presence is significant." Hayes turned from the viewport, her weathered face grim. At 62, she was the oldest serving officer in the human fleet, a veteran of every major conflict since the colonial wars. She'd seen humanity at its worst and its best. Now she feared she was about to see something unprecedented. "How significant, Commander?" Price consulted his holographic display, his young face pale. Conservative estimates put the ethereal communion fleet at over 12,000 vessels. They're massing in the Beta Cygni system, approximately 40 light-years from here. A hush fell over the command deck. 12,000 ships. Humanity's entire navy numbered fewer than 800 vessels. Analysis suggests they're not just bringing their military forces, Price continued. Intelligence indicates they've mobilized their entire civilization. Every ship, every resource, every warrior. This isn't an invasion, Admiral. It's an extermination fleet. Hayes nodded slowly. She'd expected as much. The reports from the attacked colonies painted a clear picture. Humanity had done something no other species had managed in thousands of years. They'd made the ethereal communion afraid. "What's our status on the evacuation efforts?" Hayes asked. "Mixed," replied Captain Diana Foster, Hayes's logistics coordinator. "We've successfully evacuated 90% of the outer rim colonies, but the core worlds are refusing to abandon their positions. Mars is mobilizing its defense grid, and Earth..." She paused. "Earth is preparing for siege." Hayes closed her eyes briefly. Earth. Beautiful. Terrible Earth. The birth world that had forged humanity in fire and ice, that had made them into something the galaxy had never seen before. If the aliens wanted to destroy humanity, they'd have to go through the death world that created them. "Admiral," a new voice called from the communication station. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, a brilliant young officer with cybernetic implants that let her process multiple data streams simultaneously. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the ethereal communion. They're..." They want to talk. Hayes felt her eyebrows rise. After systematically harvesting human colonies, now they wanted to negotiate? Put it through. The main screen flickered, and for the first time Hayes saw their enemy. The alien that appeared was different from the one in the distress call they'd all seen. Older, more composed, but with the same elegant features and crystal crown. When it spoke, its voice was melodious but strained. I am High Consciousness A.L. Darris of the Ethereal Communion. I address Admiral Hayes of the Human Fleet. Hayes stepped forward. You know who I am. We know many things about your species now, Admiral. We have studied you since our unfortunate encounter with your colonies. We have a proposition. Hayes felt her jaw tighten. You murdered 50,000 civilians. What could you possibly have to say that would interest me? The alien's expression remained neutral, but Hayes caught a flicker of something in its large eyes. Fear? Respect? We made an error in judgment, Eldaris said. We believed your species to be typical soft-worlders, suitable for harvesting. We now understand that you are different. You are Deathworlders. Your evolution has made you into something we had not encountered before. Get to the point, Hayes growled. We offer you a bargain, Admiral. Withdraw your fleets to your home system. Accept containment within a 50 light-year radius of Earth. In return, we will allow your species to survive. The command deck erupted in angry murmurs, but Hayes held up a hand for silence. And if we refuse, then we will do what we should have done originally. We will sterilize every world you inhabit, every ship you fly, every trace of your existence. Your species will become extinct. Hayes stared at the alien for a long moment, then surprised everyone by laughing. It was a harsh sound, filled with bitter amusement. You still don't understand, do you? She said. You think we're afraid of extinction? You think the threat of death will make us cower? She stepped closer to the screen. We're from Earth, consciousness. Earth doesn't make cowards, it makes predators. Something shifted in the alien's expression. For just a moment, Hayes saw pure terror flash across its features. You would choose extinction over confinement? Eldaris asked, its voice barely above a whisper. We choose freedom, Hayes replied firmly. We choose to fight, and if you want to wipe us out, you'll have to go through every ship, every weapon, every human who refuses to kneel. She paused, letting the words sink in. But here's what you don't understand about Deathworlders' consciousness. We don't just fight to survive. We fight to win. The transmission cut off, leaving the command deck in stunned silence. Captain Foster was the first to speak. Admiral, should we begin final preparations? Hayes turned back to the viewport, watching as more human ships dropped out of hyperspace to join the fleet. Cruisers from Mars, destroyers from the Centauri colonies, even civilian vessels retrofitted with weapons. All of humanity was coming together for this fight. Yes, she said quietly. Signal all ships, battle stations, and send a message to Earth. Tell them what's coming. Tell them, she paused, thinking of the blue-green world that had given birth to the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever seen. Tell them it's time to show the universe what Deathworlders can do. In the depths of space, 12,000 alien vessels began their final approach toward human space. They came with overwhelming force, with technology beyond human understanding, with the combined might of a civilization that had conquered the galaxy. But they were about to learn something that every predator on Earth knew instinctively. Sometimes, the prey fights back. Chapter 3. The Price of Underestimation. The first shots of the war were fired in the Proxima system, 3 days after Admiral Hayes's defiant rejection of the Ethereal Communion's ultimatum. Captain Chen watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as the alien vanguard emerged from hyperspace. 50 sleek vessels that moved through space like living things. My God, whispered Lieutenant Torres, studying her tactical display. Captain, they're ships. They're beautiful. She was right. The Ethereal Communion vessels were works of art as much as weapons of war. They curved and flowed like sculptures made of liquid metal and crystal, their hulls seeming to shift and ripple in the starlight. No hard edges, no visible weapons, just elegant perfection that seemed to mock the angular, aggressive lines of human warships. "Beautiful doesn't win wars," Chen replied, but she couldn't keep the uncertainty out of her voice. The human fleet in Proxima numbered 37 ships. They were outgunned, outmanned, and facing technology they didn't understand. "Incoming transmission," announced Lieutenant Webb. "It's the alien flagship. Put it through." The screen shimmered, revealing a new alien face. This one was younger than the high consciousness they'd spoken with before, its crystal crown smaller but somehow more vibrant. When it spoke, its voice carried the musical quality of its species but with an undertone of cold arrogance. "Human vessels, you will surrender immediately. I am Warsinger Kethvar, and I speak for the Communion's military arm. Your resistance is futile. Your species will be contained or eliminated." Chen felt her temper flare. After everything they'd done, the aliens still thought humanity would simply roll over and surrender. "This is Captain Chen of the UES Defiance. You attacked our colonies, you murdered our people. The only thing you'll get from us is plasma fire." The alien's expression remained unchanged. "You misunderstand your situation, human. We have studied your military capabilities. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are crude. Your tactics are—" It paused, as if searching for the right word. "Pedestrian. You cannot hope to match the accumulated wisdom of 10,000 years of warfare." Chen looked around her bridge at her crew. Marcus Webb, a kid from the Detroit slums who'd fought gang wars before joining the Navy. Elena Torres, who'd survived the Titan Rebellion. Riley O'Connor, who'd led Marines through hell on 6 different worlds. These weren't the soft-worlders the aliens expected. "You want to see human tactics?" Chen asked. "Marcus, open a channel to all ships. Elena, arm everything we've got." "Captain," Torres said quietly, "their ships are larger than ours, more advanced. Maybe we should—" "No," Chen cut her off. "They think we're prey. Time to show them what predators do when cornered." She turned back to the screen. "You want a war alien? You've got one." The transmission cut off and space exploded into violence. The ethereal communion ships moved with fluid grace, their energy weapons painting the void with streams of brilliant light. Their tactics were perfect, classical. Formations, elegant maneuvers, precise timing. It was warfare as art, beautiful and deadly, for about 30 seconds. Then the humans showed them what Deathworld evolution really meant. The UES Defiance broke formation and charged straight at the alien flagship, its engines screaming at maximum. Burn. The move was suicide by any reasonable tactical analysis, exactly what the aliens expected from desperate prey. Instead, it was the opening move in a strategy born from Earth's most vicious predators. "All ships execute Mongoose Protocol," Chen ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. The human fleet scattered like a pack of wolves, abandoning all pretense of formation warfare. Individual ships began hunting in pairs, using their smaller size and brutal acceleration to get inside the aliens' elegant formations. They ignored the larger vessels entirely, focusing on the smaller escorts with savage efficiency. "What are they doing?" Kethavar's voice came over the comm, confusion, evident despite the universal translator. "This is not warfare. This is chaos." Chen smiled grimly as she watched her tactical display. 3 alien escorts were already dying, their beautiful hulls torn apart by concentrated human fire. The aliens were trying to maintain their formations, but human ships kept appearing in their blind spots, striking and vanishing before they could respond. "This is pack hunting," she replied, "something your species never learned to do." The first alien ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its death cry echoing across the communication frequencies. Then another, and another. "Impossible," Kethvar whispered. "Your ships are inferior. Your weapons are primitive." "But we're not fighting your kind of war," Chen said as she watched another alien vessel fall to a coordinated strike from 2 human destroyers. "We're fighting our kind of war." The human ships moved like sharks in bloody water, exploiting every weakness, every gap in the alien formations. They used their own vessels as bait, drawing alien ships into kill zones where multiple human vessels could focus fire. They rammed damaged alien ships with smaller vessels, trading hull for hull in a calculus that would have horrified any civilized species. It was ugly, brutal, and effective. Within 20 minutes, half the alien vanguard was destroyed or disabled. The survivors were trying to retreat, their elegant formations shattered by the savage efficiency of human pack tactics. "This is impossible," Kethvar repeated, his voice now carrying a note of panic. "You are supposed to be harvested. You are supposed to surrender." "We're Deathworlders," Chen replied as her ship's guns tore into another alien vessel. "We don't surrender. We don't run. We hunt." The alien flagship suddenly accelerated, trying to escape the carnage. But Chen had anticipated this. 3 human ships were already in position, their weapons charged and ready. "For New Denver," she whispered, and gave the order to fire. The alien flagship died in a pillar of flame and radiation, taking war singer Kethvar and his crew with it. The remaining alien ships, leaderless and demoralized, fled toward their main fleet. Chen stood on her bridge surveying the aftermath. 14 human ships were damaged, 3 were destroyed, but they'd annihilated an alien force that should have crushed them easily. "Captain," Webb said quietly, "we're receiving signals from the main Communion fleet. They're afraid." Chen nodded. Good. Fear was a weapon too, and one that Deathworlders had learned to use long before they reached the stars. "Signal Admiral Hayes," she ordered. "Tell her the aliens just learned their first lesson about fighting humans. Now let's see how they handle their education." In the depths of space, the Ethereal Communion's main fleet received the survivors' reports in stunned silence. 12,000 ships, the combined might of their civilization, suddenly didn't seem like enough. They were about to face an entire species that had evolved on the most dangerous world any of them had ever imagined. A species that treated warfare not as art, but as predation. For the first time in their species' history, the Ethereal Communion considered the possibility that they might lose. Chapter 4. The Deathworld Fleet. The final battle began at the Iulea, edge of the Sol system, where humanity's home star cast its light on the largest fleet ever assembled in human history. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the UES Destiny, watching as nearly 1,000 human ships formed a defensive line between the approaching alien armada and Earth itself. Behind them, the blue-green world that had spawned humanity hung in space like a jewel. But Hayes knew that Earth's beauty was deceptive. The planet that had given birth to humanity was a crucible of evolution, a world where only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable survived. Now, its children were about to face their greatest test. "Admiral," Commander Price reported, his voice tight with tension. "Long-range sensors are detecting the Communion fleet. They're massive." Hayes nodded grimly. The reports from the outer battles had been encouraging. Human forces had performed far better than anyone had expected against the alien vanguard fleets. But this was different. This was the full might of the Ethereal Communion. 12,000 vessels carrying the accumulated military power of a galaxy-spanning civilization. "How long until they reach us?" Hayes asked. 18 hours, Admiral. They're coming in formation, taking their time." Hayes understood the delay. The aliens were being cautious now, having learned that humanity wasn't the easy prey they'd expected. The early battles had cost them hundreds of ships and thousands of lives. They were no longer treating this as a harvesting operation. They were treating it as an extermination. "Signal from Earth Defense Command," announced Lieutenant Santos. "General Morrison is requesting a final status update." Hayes closed her eyes briefly. General Rebecca Morrison commanded Earth's defensive grid, orbital platforms, ground-based missile systems, and the planet's own fleet of defense vessels. If the human fleet failed, Morrison and her forces would be all that stood between the aliens and humanity's birth world. "Tell the General we'll hold them as long as we can," Hayes replied. But if we fall, Earth will fight, Santos said quietly. To the last person, to the last weapon. That's what General Morrison said. Hayes smiled grimly. That was the human way, defiance in the face of impossible odds, courage when confronted with extinction. It was what had carried them from the caves of Africa to the stars themselves. Admiral, Captain Foster called from her station, we're receiving a transmission from the Communion Fleet. It's the High Consciousness. Hayes nodded. One last attempt at negotiation, perhaps, or more likely, a demand for surrender. Put it through. Eldaris appeared on the screen, but the elegant alien looked different now. Its crystal crown seemed dimmer, its posture less assured. The reports from the Vanguard fleets had clearly shaken the Communion's leadership. Admiral Hayes, the alien said, its melodious voice carrying undertones of strain. We offer you one final opportunity. Surrender now and your species will be granted a swift end. Continue to resist, and we will be forced to demonstrate the full power of the Communion. Hayes studied the alien's face, seeing something there that surprised her. Not just fear, regret, as if Eldaris genuinely wished things had gone differently. You're afraid, Hayes said, more statement than question. We are concerned, the High Consciousness admitted. Your species has proven more resilient than anticipated. But Admiral, you face the combined might of 300 worlds, 12,000 ships, millions of warriors. You cannot prevail. Hayes looked around her bridge at the men and women who had volunteered to stand between their species and extinction. Then she turned back to the screen. You're right, she said quietly. We probably can't win. Your fleet is larger, your technology more advanced, your warriors more experienced. She paused, letting the words sink in. But you're forgetting something crucial about Deathworlders' consciousness. What is that? Eldaris asked. We don't fight to win. We fight because we can't do anything else. It's what we are. It's what Earth made us. Hayes stepped closer to the screen. You want to exterminate humanity? Then you'll have to kill every last one of us. And High Consciousness, we're going to make you pay for every life and blood. The transmission cut off, leaving the human fleet in tense silence. Within hours, the alien armada appeared on the edge of the solar system, like a moving constellation. 12,000 ships, each one a masterpiece of engineering and art, arranged, in perfect formations that spoke of millennia of military tradition. Against them, the human fleet looked small and crude, angular warships bristling with weapons, their hulls scarred from countless battles. But as Hayes watched her tactical display, she felt a surge of fierce pride. All ships, she broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Hayes. Today we stand between our home and those who would destroy it. Today we show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when they're cornered. She paused, thinking of all the worlds that had fallen to the Communion, all the species that had surrendered without a fight. Today we teach the universe that some prey fights back. The first wave of alien ships approached like a tide of metal and energy, their weapons charging with brilliant light. But the human fleet didn't wait for them to attack. Instead, they did something that no civilized species would ever consider. They charged. 1,000 human warships accelerated toward the alien fleet at maximum burn, abandoning all pretense of defensive formations. It was suicide by any rational military doctrine, exactly what the aliens expected from desperate primitives. Instead, it was the opening move in the most savage display of military tactics the galaxy had ever witnessed. The human ships scattered as they hit the alien formation, each one targeting different vessels with brutal efficiency. They ignored the largest alien ships entirely, focusing on escorts and support vessels with pack-hunting tactics that turned the elegant Communion formation into chaos. They're not fighting like a fleet, Eldaris whispered on an open channel, watching in horror as human ships appeared in blind spots, struck vital targets, and vanished before his forces could respond. They're fighting like predators. Hayes smiled grimly as she watched her tactical display. Human ships were dying. The aliens' superior technology was taking its toll, but they were taking the enemy with them. More importantly, They were disrupting the alien formation, preventing the communion from bringing their full numerical advantage to bear. "Signal Captain Chen," Hayes ordered. "Execute the Terran Gambit." On the far side of the battle, Captain Chen received the order and felt her blood run cold. The Terran Gambit was humanity's most desperate tactic, something they'd hoped never to use. "All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance," Chen broadcast. "Prepare for nuclear release." The aliens watched in confusion as the human fleet suddenly pulled back, abandoning their savage attack. Had they finally realized the futility of their position? Then the first nuclear warhead detonated in the heart of the alien formation. The ethereal communion had never encountered nuclear weapons used in space combat. Their technology was clean, efficient, elegant. The idea of irradiating space itself, of turning stellar regions into radioactive nightmares, was inconceivable to their civilized minds. But humans had been born on a world where evolution was driven by catastrophe, where survival meant adapting to the unthinkable. They had no problem making space itself a weapon. The nuclear barrage lasted for 17 minutes, turning the space between Earth and Mars into a radioactive hellscape. Alien ships died by the hundreds, their elegant hulls cracked by radiation and torn apart by gravitational shears. When the barrage ended, over half the communion fleet was gone. "This is madness," Eldaris broadcast, his voice breaking. "You've poisoned space itself, made it uninhabitable for generations." "We're Deathworlders," Hayes replied calmly. "We're used to living in poisoned environments, are you?" The alien fleet began to retreat, but Hayes wasn't finished. She had one more card to play, the one she'd hoped never to use. "All ships," she broadcast, "prepare for ramming speed." The remaining human ships, damaged and dying, turned toward the fleeing alien fleet with their engines at maximum burn. They weren't trying to escape or regroup. They were making suicide runs. One by one, human warships slammed into alien vessels at relativistic speeds, turning both ships into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. It was warfare as madness. Tactics that no sane species would ever consider. But it was working. The alien retreat became a rout as ship after ship fell to human desperation. The survivors fled toward the edge of the system, their perfect formations shattered, their confidence broken. Eldaris's flagship was among the last to escape, and Hayes opened a channel to the retreating alien. "This is what you get," she said, her voice carried across the void to the fleeing communion fleet. "When you try to harvest Deathworlders, we don't surrender, we don't break. We just make you pay until you can't afford the cost." The alien fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of two civilizations' hopes and the radioactive graveyard of the solar system's outer reaches. Hayes looked at her tactical display. Of the 1,000 human ships that had entered the battle, fewer than 200 remained functional. But they had done the impossible. They had driven off the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. "Admiral," Commander Price said quietly, "we're receiving signals from across human space. Word of the victory is spreading. Every human world is celebrating." Hayes nodded, but her expression remained grim. They had won a battle, not a war. The ethereal communion would return, and next time they would know what they were facing. But for now, humanity had proven something to the galaxy. They had shown that some species forged in the crucible of death worlds would never accept extinction quietly. They were predators, and the galaxy would remember. Epilogue. The New Galactic Order. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy was a very different place. Captain Zara Chen stood on the observation deck of Starbase Defiance, humanity's newest deep space installation, watching as ships from a dozen different species docked at the station's ports. The sight would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Aliens queuing up to meet with human representatives seeking alliance, trade agreements, and most importantly, protection. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" Admiral Hayes said, joining Chen at the viewport. The older woman looked tired but satisfied, her weathered face bearing new lines from the stress of commanding humanity's transformation from prey to predator. Chen nodded. watching as a sleek vessel bearing the markings of the Centaurian Trade Federation maneuvered toward docking port 7. 6 months ago, we were facing extinction. Now we're being asked to protect half the galaxy. Fear has a way of changing perspectives, Hayes observed. The ethereal communion's retreat sent shockwaves through every civilized world. For the first time in 10,000 years, someone stood up to them and won. The victory at Sol had indeed changed everything. News of humanity's impossible triumph had spread across the galaxy at light speed, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees. Species that had cowered under communion rule for millennia suddenly saw hope. If the primitive humans could drive off the galaxy's greatest predators, perhaps freedom was possible after all. But the victory had come at a cost that kept Hayes awake at night. Status report on the fleet reconstruction? Chen asked, though she already knew the numbers by heart. Better than expected, Hayes replied. The new Alliance members are surprisingly generous with their technology transfers. The Altarians shared their shield generators, the Vegan Confederacy provided advanced sensors, and the Rigel Consortium. She smiled. They've given us access to their shipyards. We'll have 500 new vessels online within a year. Chen felt a mixture of pride and unease. The human fleet was growing rapidly, incorporating alien technologies that made their ships more powerful than ever before. But with that power came responsibility and expectations. Any word from the Outer Rim patrols? She asked. Hayes's expression darkened. That's what I came to discuss. Captain Morrison's task force encountered another communion harvesting operation in the Kepler sector. 3 worlds, all stripped clean, but this time... She paused. This time they left a message. Chen felt ice in her veins. What kind of message? Visual transmission. High consciousness Aeldaris himself. Hayes activated a holographic display showing the elegant alien's face. But where once there had been arrogance and cold superiority, now there was something else entirely. Hatred, pure and simple. Deathworlders, the recorded alien said, its melodious voice now carrying undertones of venom. You have disrupted the natural order. You have given the inferior species hope where there should be acceptance. This cannot be allowed to continue. The recording shifted, showing images of the harvested worlds. But these weren't the surgical extractions of the past. These were acts of spite. Entire ecosystems burned to ash, cities turned to glass. Unnecessary destruction that served no purpose except to send a message. The communion is changing, Hayes said quietly. They're becoming something they never were before. Vindictive. Cruel. We've introduced them to concepts their species never evolved to handle. Chen studied the images with growing horror. They're learning to hate. Exactly, and hatred makes them unpredictable, dangerous in ways they never were when they saw us as simple prey. A chime from the station's communication system interrupted their conversation. Lieutenant Santos's voice echoed through the observation deck. Admiral Hayes, Captain Chen, please report to the diplomatic section. We have visitors. Hayes and Chen exchanged glances. The station's diplomatic wing had been busy lately, with delegations from across the galaxy seeking audiences with humanity's military leadership. Most wanted protection, some offered alliance, and a few simply wanted to understand how a single Death World species had accomplished the impossible. The diplomatic section was a study in contrasts, human architecture augmented with alien technology, functional corridors lined with art from a dozen different worlds. In the main conference room, they found an unexpected assembly waiting for them. Dr. Sarah Kim stood at the head of the table, her xenoarchaeology equipment spread across its surface. Beside her sat 3 aliens Chen didn't recognize, small furry creatures with large eyes and nervous expressions. Admiral, Captain, Dr. Kim said, rising to greet them. I'd like you to meet representatives of the Kytheran Republic. They've brought us some interesting information. The lead alien, barely 4 feet tall with silver fur and trembling hands, spoke in a high-pitched voice that the universal translator rendered as barely above a whisper. Honored Deathworlders, it said, we bring news of great importance, the communion that they are not the only threat your species must face. Hayes felt her stomach drop. Explain. The alien gestured to Dr. Kim, who activated a holographic star map showing the galaxy's spiral arms. Red markers indicated known communion territory, while blue showed the growing human alliance. The Catharans have been monitoring deep space communications, Dr. Kim explained. Admiral, there are other powers out there, ancient ones. The communion's defeat has drawn their attention. The star map shifted, showing new markers in colors Chen had never seen before: purple, green, gold. Each represented a different galactic power, civilization so old and powerful that even the ethereal communion gave them wide berth. The void touched, the Catharan continued, pointing to the purple markers. Machine intelligences that consume entire star systems for raw materials. The hive consciousness, green markers. A collective organism that spans thousands of worlds. And the architects, gold markers. Being so ancient they were old when our sun was young. Hayes stared at the map, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. Are you telling me that by defeating the communion we've attracted the attention of even worse threats? Not worse, the alien replied. Different. The communion sought to harvest and preserve. These others, they have different goals. Some seek to consume, others to assimilate. The architects, it shuddered. The architects seek to remake reality itself according to their design. Chen found her voice. Why are you telling us this? The Catharan looked directly at her with its large dark eyes. Because in 10,000 years of communion rule, no species has ever successfully resisted them. You have done more than resist. You have driven them back. If anyone can stand against what is coming, it is the Deathworlders. Dr. Kim pulled up additional data screens. Captain, I've been analyzing the communications intercepts. The other powers are watching us. They're trying to determine if humanity represents a threat to their own expansion plans. And their conclusion? Hayes asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Mixed, Dr. Kim replied. Some see us as a potential ally. Others as a rival that must be eliminated before we grow too strong. But Admiral... She paused, her expression grave. They're all afraid of us, every single one. Hayes felt a bitter laugh escape her throat. 6 months ago, humanity had been an unknown species on the galactic periphery. Now they were being discussed in the councils of ancient civilizations as a force to be reckoned with. There's more, the Catharan said softly. The communion has not been idle since their defeat. They are changing, adapting, learning from their losses. High consciousness Aeldaris has been gathering support from species that share their fear of Deathworlder expansion. The star map shifted again, showing new alliance networks forming throughout communion space. Red lines connected dozens of species, all united by a single goal: the containment or elimination of humanity. They're building a coalition, Chen realized. Every species that's afraid of what we represent. The galaxy is choosing sides, Hayes said quietly, and we're forcing them to make that choice just by existing. The Catharan nodded solemnly. The age of communion dominance is ending. What comes next, that depends on choices your species makes in the coming years. Hayes looked at the star map, at the vast swirls of galactic politics now centered around humanity's actions. They had wanted to save their colonies, to protect their species from extinction. Instead, they had triggered the largest geopolitical shift in galactic history. What do you need from us? She asked the alien delegation. Protection, the Catharan replied simply. My people have lived under communion rule for 3,000 years. We want to be free, but we are not warriors. We are not predators. We cannot fight as Deathworlders fight. Hayes nodded. It was the same request they'd been hearing from dozens of species. Join the human alliance, accept human protection, gain freedom from the communion's rule. Each time the price was the same: humanity's growing responsibility for galactic security. We'll need to discuss this with Earth Command, Hayes said. but I can tell you that humanity has never abandoned those who seek freedom." The aliens departed, an hour later leaving Hayes, Chen, and Dr. Kim alone in the conference room. The star map still glowed before them, showing the vast complexity of galactic politics in all its terrifying scope. "We're not ready for this," Chen said quietly. 6 months ago, we barely had a unified planetary government. Now half the galaxy is looking to us for leadership. "Ready or not, it's what we've got," Hayes replied. "The question is, what do we do with it?" Dr. Kim cleared her throat. "If I may, Admiral, I've been studying the historical patterns of galactic civilizations. What we're seeing isn't unprecedented. Every few million years, a new power emerges that reshapes the galactic order. Usually it's a technological breakthrough or an evolutionary advantage. Like being from a death world," Chen observed. "Exactly. Humanity's advantage isn't just our aggression or our tactics, it's our adaptability. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us in every way possible, so we learned to survive anything. That makes us uniquely suited to handle, well, anything the galaxy throws at us." Hayes considered this. "You're saying we're not just randomly successful, we're evolutionarily designed for this." "In a sense, yes. Earth made us into the galaxy's ultimate generalists. We can fight like predators, think like prey, adapt like survivors, and cooperate like social species. No other civilization has that combination." A new chime from the communication system interrupted their discussion. This time, it was Commander Price's voice, tight with urgency. "Admiral, we're receiving priority transmissions from the deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures in the void between galaxies. Something big is moving toward our local cluster." Hayes felt the familiar chill of impending crisis. "How big?" "Admiral, it's larger than anything in our databases. The energy signature suggests a structure approximately the size of our entire solar system, and it's accelerating." Hayes, Chen, and Dr. Kim exchanged glances. After everything they'd been through, after all the impossible challenges they'd overcome, something even larger was approaching. "The architects," Dr. Kim whispered. "It has to be. They're the only ones with technology on that scale." Hayes straightened her shoulders, feeling the weight of command settle around her like familiar armor. "Signal all fleet commanders, emergency. Conference in 1 hour. And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we may need to evacuate the outer colonies again." As they left the conference room, Chen caught Hayes' arm. "Admiral, are you sure we can handle whatever's coming?" Hayes looked back at the star map, at the vast expanse of space that now looked to humanity for protection. 6 months ago, she would have said no. 6 months ago, the idea of humans as galactic guardians would have been laughable. But 6 months ago, she hadn't known what Deathworlders were truly capable of. "Captain," she said quietly, "we're from Earth. We've been handling the impossible since we climbed down from the trees. Whatever's coming, we'll find a way to fight it." Outside the station's viewports, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the struggles of the tiny organic beings that had learned to travel between them. But among those stars, something vast and alien was stirring, drawn by the actions of a single species that refused to accept extinction. The galaxy was about to learn that when you threaten a Deathworld species, you don't just face their military might. You face the accumulated survival instincts of 4 billion years of evolution, refined by the cruelest teacher in the universe. You face Earth's children and they do not yield. In the depths of space, ancient minds turned their attention toward the spiral arm that housed a small, unremarkable yellow star. The inhabitants of the third planet from that star had done something unprecedented. They had changed the fundamental balance of galactic power through sheer refusal to surrender. Now, the galaxy's oldest residents were coming to investigate, and humanity was about to discover that their war with the ethereal communion had been nothing more than the opening move in a game whose rules they were only beginning to understand. Deathworlders had announced their presence to the universe. Now the universe was preparing to respond. The end.